Hello, Modus. The last U.S. imperialism lecture. I swear. I promise. I'm really sorry it took three. I want to pick up where we left off, which was the United States taking over other countries. If you remember, the last thing that we talked about was the Boxer Rebellion and our intervention there, ensuring the end of spheres of influence and an open door policy in China. Because of that, the United States begins taking a much more aggressive policy around the world. You can see here again in the map all the different places that the United States is intervening. Again, most of those being in Latin America and the Caribbean. In fact, from 1900 to 1917, the three presidents that we mentioned, Roosevelt, Taft, and Wilson, used the Roosevelt Corollary. That's what RC stands for, the Roosevelt Corollary, which, if you remember, it was nicknamed Big Stick Diplomacy, to intervene in the Dominican Republic, Panama, Cuba, Nicaragua, Honduras, Mexico, and Haiti. We sent troops in, we controlled their budgets, we told them how to spend their own, which is another way of saying we told them how to spend their own tax dollars. We also ran their elections for them. All of these things. This is really, this is most identified by this political cartoon here, where you see Uncle Sam again, only now he's got kind of a different portrayal. He's lost a lot of weight, but here you see what's happening to him. If you look carefully, you'll see young Hawaii there at his feet. Cuba is pulling on him, on his, looks like his suspenders. Puerto Rico is pulling at his hair, and the Philippines are yanking on his beard. Basically, all his children are just going crazy. All his possessions, or in this case, his children, are just horrible little children, and he's just having a time of it. So I want to spend some time talking about the different ways that the United States started intervening in these different countries. And the first thing that I want to talk about is Taft's dollar diplomacy. Taft's dollar diplomacy is the second type of foreign policy after big stick diplomacy, or the Roosevelt Corollary. William Howard Taft tried to be different from Roosevelt. He thought, the threat of the stick is just bad. It makes us look like bullies, and he was correct in that. He thought, why don't we use money instead of a stick? It'll make us look better. So instead, he got U.S. businesses to invest in Latin America. And that sounds really good. You pour money into a country, they'll like us a lot better then. And it sounds really good, except that when countries that are new aren't really good at business, and businesses fail, or they can't pay their loans off as quickly as expected, then things don't go well for them. And in this case, according to dollar diplomacy, if the country wasn't able to pay their loans back on time, then the U.S. was allowed to send troops in, like this. What you're looking at are U.S. Marines in Nicaragua after they have captured the flag of a rebel named Augusto Sandino. They were actually part of what later became known as the Banana Wars, where a man named Major General Smedley Butler, which is a great name, I should mention, Major General Smedley Butler actually put down rebellions all over the Caribbean and Latin America. Later, he was actually called up and allegedly by a group of businessmen in the 1930s, and they asked him to overthrow our own government to start, because this group of big businessmen didn't like Franklin Roosevelt. And he went before Congress and said, hey, these guys tried to get me to overthrow the government in a coup d'etat. We'll talk about that later. The Banana Wars were called the Banana Wars because big businesses, were so invested in fruit and agriculture there, that they felt that they should be able to control the governments down there, and when, especially American businesses, and when the governments down there didn't want to be controlled by the businesses, U.S. and other countries would send troops down there to intervene. And the U.S. government was one of them. They sent U.S. Marines down there to intervene, in some cases overthrow the governments, to get what we wanted, to get the governments to do what we wanted them to do. Some big targets for the Banana Wars were the Dominican Republic, Nicaragua, and Haiti. Taft's dollar diplomacy ended up resulting in us taking over the governments of Dominican Republic and Haiti and making them, we took over their government, we collected their taxes for them, paid ourselves back first before that they could let their own government function, which of course makes them really resent us because their countries got even poorer then as a result, which means all that idea of them liking us more because of this money actually makes them dislike us now even more. So dollar diplomacy was actually a type of economic imperialism. Make sure you get that in your notes. Dollar diplomacy was another type of imperialism. Big stick diplomacy was imperialism because it was the threat of violence, right? If you don't do what we say, we're going to invade. But dollar diplomacy, it's another kind of imperialism. It uses money and the threats. Here's your money, but if you don't pay us back, well, and we send the troops in. Like these guys. We move on to this fellow, Woodrow Wilson, who here you see shaking his finger and doing his very best to chastise Pancho Villa. Was known as had a different name for his foreign policy. Woodrow Wilson's foreign policy goes by two different ones. Sometimes it's known as moral diplomacy, and other times you'll see it known as missionary diplomacy. I'm going to refer to it as missionary diplomacy. Missionary diplomacy, or in this case missionary dip, which is delicious, by the way. Sorry, that was a bad joke. Said that the United States will defend the rights of democracy, peace, and self-determination in countries. That means we support countries' right to decide their own government. That's what self-determination means. The right to choose your own government. That sounds really good, right? The U.S. will defend the rights of democracy, peace, and self-determination, which, again, the right to choose your own government. It sounds really good, but in reality, Woodrow Wilson doesn't really do that. For instance, when Haiti refused to declare war on Germany during World War I, we sent troops into Germany and forced Haiti to dissolve its legislature. We said you're done. Because you refused to declare war on Germany, who are clearly bad guys, you no longer can be a Congress. Poof, you're done. Which, think about this. Does Haiti, this little island in the Caribbean, have anything to do with World War I? They just didn't give a hoot about it. They didn't care. So they were staying out of it. And that really upset Wilson, and so he sent troops in and said, you have to do this. He also sent troops into Mexico 9 times. Even though they were in a civil war with each other, both sides in the Civil War, both sides are fighting each other. The only thing they could agree on was that the U.S. needed to stay out of it. This is our war. Stay out of it, America. But Wilson continued doing this. If you remember, one of the things that, maybe you won't remember this, one of the things that he does when he sends troops in there, the American troops demand that the Mexicans salute our flag when they invade the city of Veracruz, which is just an incredibly insulting thing. It has nothing to do with democracy. It has nothing to do with peace or even self-determination. It's actually the opposite of it. So Wilson's ideas, it sounds really good, but it's really not. In the end, missionary diplomacy sounds really good, but it's just another type of imperialism. It's doing what Americans want. It just sounds better. So that's it. What can we learn about this stuff? What's the big idea here? When it came to other countries, especially in Latin America and the Caribbean, the United States ends up really behaving in some pretty dreadful ways. This political cartoon from the time period, you see the United States treating our new possessions very severely. You can see while the African American student doesn't even get schooling over here, and the Native American student is treated as an uneducatable student. He's reading his ABCs upside down, and the Asian student, the Chinese student, is not even allowed into the classroom. So here we see just some blanket racism from the time period. Bottom line, when it comes to imperialism, the United States does some pretty horrible things at the turn of the century. What do I want you to remember from this? Let's take a look at the very last slide. Take a moment, pause this on the last slide to write down in your notes. See what you remember about this from this slide. Maybe try and do it without looking at your notes. Why did the United States engage in imperialism? Do you remember? There were 3 big reasons. See if you can remember them. Which territories did we gain during this time, and how did we acquire them? I'll give you a hint. There were 4. Technically, one of them is a protectorate, but you can, yeah, let's do that. Let's say, yeah. Mention the ones that we actually own, and then mention the one that ends up being kind of given a status of protectorate. We don't own it, but it's a protectorate. The next one. What benefits were there to our new possessions? Why do this? Why do we engage in this stuff? This is different from the first question. After we have possession of these things, what good things do come from having an empire? And there is something that's beneficial from this. But the second part of this, what problems end up coming about because of this empire that we now possess? Which leads to the next question. Why did some Americans oppose imperialism? There are 3 big reasons. And finally, and this is a big one, I'd like you to compare and contrast the foreign policies of Roosevelt, Taft, and Wilson. You can expect questions about this on your test. Thank you for bearing with me on this one. I hope you guys have a good night, and I hope you're able to see all of these.